Now, particularly after October the 7th, you've been a very prominent voice again, come back very strongly into media and public consciousness, among other things because you're somebody who has an unusually clear insight into the mindset that can do something like October the 7th. Can you explain the mindset just for anyone watching this from America or anywhere else in the West? Like, what makes somebody want to strap on a suicide vest and walk into a public place and detonate?
You know, every individual is different, and there are so many dimensions. There is a personal dimension, there is a political one, there is an ideological one. The most powerful dimension is the ideological one. A suicide bomber inspired by a God who hates the Jewish people, who hates the infidels, but in the meantime, he's a Palestinian, he's got a cause, he's living the victimhood. He's been conditioned in a climate of a propaganda that is anti-Israel, anti-West, anti-infidel, anti-anything that is non-Muslim, that is different. Then you can add to that some envy, some jealousy, whatever it is, you know, there are infinite forces that come at play that can actually cause an individual to strap up a suicide vest and end up killing himself and killing so many other innocent people that they never met before.
And of all the people you met who wanted to do this, I mean, the belief that they were going to do this and that it was a righteous act, an act justified by God and their religion, but they also literally believe that they're going to go straight to paradise.
Of course, there has to be a reward.
You say of course, but it's just, it's not, it's very alien to the rest of the world, this idea.
I mean, it is, but for those who live in delusion, you know, to believe in principle, in some entity that exists somewhere in the universe, that is punishing and rewarding people based on their obedience or their disobedience. You know, one of the things in the Quran that Allah hates the Jewish people for being disobedient. Hence, many of those jihadists think that they are the sword of God on earth, that they are actually manifesting the punishment against the Jewish people for being disobedient. And this is why, you know, I personally questioned the belief system itself. I thought it was not enough to work in counter-terrorism, shooting down terrorists or trying to stop a suicide bomber before they reach their target. But after 10 years of this operation, I came to realize that we were fighting a ghost because we did not deal with the belief system. And this is why, you know, when I go publicly and say Islam is a problem, because whether if you believe that your reward is a 72 virgins in the afterlife, you know, or you believe that you are blessed by the same entity in this life, you still believe in a hypothetical God which does not exist. But this God is actually your drive in life. So this is your delusion. And in my opinion, anyone who believes in such a God have a mental issue, and they actually should be in a mental asylum. But when you have 2 billion people like this, it becomes a majority, and it becomes the agreeable. It becomes a certain truth, even though it's just a projection of human ego. So as someone who lived this delusion and broke free, to be delusional is something. To be a delusional suicide bomber is something else. You Everybody can have whatever dream, they want to have in reality, their perception of reality, but there is a limit.
Tell me about the families quickly. When a suicide bomber went off in this period and killed people, how did their families back in the West Bank react?
It's a very strange phenomenon because they just lost their child. But now everybody in the society is congratulating them for their loss. They don't say, we're sorry for your loss. It's a great job. It's a great gift to the society. Congratulations. Your son is a shaheed.
A martyr.
A martyr. So now, when everybody is coming to the mother to celebrate, now the mother has two choices. To tell everybody to go away, and this is how she's going to lose the status in the society. Or just accept the fact that she lost her son, but she now can gain something out of it, which is the mother of a martyr.
To have the pride of
the pride and the status of a family that contributed towards society. Is why praising suicide bombers, by hypocrites in the society, that none of them would have agreed to their children to die in a suicide bombing attack.
Khalid Mashal wouldn't.
Sheikh Hassan Yusuf wouldn't. None of the Hamas leaders would. So
none of them sacrificed their own sons.
Unless their sons die on their behalf, then they would say, we sacrificed our sons. But usually they want the poor people to die on their behalf. They want others to die on their behalf.
You're probably one of the very few people who would have seen what Hamas did on October the 7th, and as well as being appalled, would not have been surprised.
Honestly, I was surprised.
You were?
I was surprised. Not by Hamas brutality, by the scale of the event. Because to move from door to door and just kill everything, animal, human, infant, whatever came your way, innocent people, that includes foreign workers, that includes dogs, that includes life, everything. And by a bunch of savages, filming the whole thing as they are in a big party.
The glee.
Yeah, or something, whatever it is, the terminology, it really was shocking to see.
It's in a way, it's amazing to me because you'd seen the brutality of this movement all these years, but still, October the 7th shocked you.
The scale. The scale of the attack and the documented attacks. Let's say
the fact that they wanted to record their crimes.
That everything was just streamed live or recorded
GoPro
in time.
Yeah.
There was no suicide bombing attack that I did not see the fresh photos of the scene. And I'd say could be the ugliest thing any human being could see or smell. And every time, and dozens of those suicide bombing. And it's the ugliest thing. So it's not that I was not familiar with Hamas brutality and what they were capable of creating and the destruction. But this one, you see them moving, you see them speaking, you see them enjoying it. They rejoice in the death of so many innocent, defenseless people. In people's living rooms, enjoying beverages from their kitchen, while the children are mourning the death of their parents just next door. There is no human language that can describe the evil that took place on October 7th. And that's not just a war crime. It's not just killing. It's a genocide by all standards. And to see such a genocide, but nobody's talking about it. I was speaking to the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations and telling him, This is a genocide, what you went through, what your country went through. You know, we have to build the case. This is not just a terrorist attack. And it's still, until now, Israel is not making its case publicly.
Let me ask you, as we wrap up, I remember speaking with you almost 10 years ago now, after a set of attacks in France, in Paris. There was the Charlie Hebdo attacks, the attack on a kosher supermarket, then the attacks when dozens of jihadists rampaged through Paris, massacred people at the Bataclan Theatre and the stadium and coffee shops. And I remember then asking you about, you know, what does it take for the West to wake up to this, or aware of this reality? Because you grew up and you saw it firsthand, and you were a very unusual person in thinking your way out of it, which, I mean, is incredibly unusual. I would say that most Israelis today understand the reality that there's a group or groups of people who say, we want to kill you, and if they get the opportunity, they do. But the rest of the West seems to me, even all these years after we spoke about it, still is in a sleep. What would you say to Emmanuel Macron, Rishi Sunak, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris? What would you say to them to communicate to them that this is real?
One of the biggest contributors to terrorism and violence, actually hypocrites. Because when we are hypocrites, we're not calling things for what they are. We see the Islamists' threat. We see what they're capable of doing. And when I say CIA, FBI, Homeland Security, other intelligence services in the West, most democracies in the West, they know the ideological dimension that motivates terrorists and terrorist attacks. But we prefer not to talk about it because it's Islamophobic, or because it's controversial, or we may offend the Muslims. So now we're submitting to their intimidation when we don't talk about it, when we don't challenge it, that this is not acceptable. You know, it's not acceptable. Life depends on diversity. And the different is appreciated. You know, yes, we should have human discipline because we are not animals. But also we don't want someone acting as a sword of God, because then everybody would think that they have this authority, and the only outcome is bloodshed. We have the Muslims who live in the West, and I think there is no problem with that in principle. But don't enforce your religious identity, and when they do, we have to counter it. Like, for example, we cannot separate church and state and allow mosque and state to be united. We cannot just stay asleep while watching the Islamic hubs produce more extremists. And today, you know, we have so many Islamic fanatics who actually preach through social media, through YouTube, and they are based in London, they're based in Paris, and they don't only advocate for a peaceful Islam, actually they're just preaching very dangerous, radical ideologies, the Muslim Brotherhood ideologies that is anti-West, that is anti-civilization, that is representing the 7th century mentality as an alternative to the modern world. And they are protected by the freedom of speech. But there has to be a limit to where you can preach such sick ideology. And I think most of the leaders are afraid, whether they are ignorant of the topic or they have short-term interest and they don't want to compromise this interest. They don't want to offend Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia or like Qatar, they have their own calculations. But in the meantime, we cannot hide from the challenge because Islamists are in the West and they are waiting for an angry cause. And this is the dangerous thing about the Palestine. This is why one of the reasons that I came back and I came very strong against the pro-Palestine, because it's not about Palestine. There is no such a thing as Palestine. It's anti-West, and it's looking for an angry cause. Yeah. And the more anger they are able to generate, they're creating the climate for those individuals who have been waiting to act. So I don't want to say, what are we waiting for? Like another major terrorist attack? You know, then we are going to understand that we have an enemy within. I hope we don't get to that point. But let me tell you something. From my personal experience, when they start first shouting from the river to the sea, calling for Jewish genocide, it was no time before chaos. And it became suicide bombing attacks, became stabbings, it became mass shootings, it became, everywhere became a target. And Palestine is chaos. Islam is chaos. And of course, this is very hard to say, but I hope that people, we don't get to the point to see the things going completely out of control, to realize that we have individuals among us that we really need to leash, you know, that they cannot take advantage of the freedom. There is a limit. You know, you cannot advocate on behalf of terrorists and terrorist ideology by the name of freedom of speech. It's not acceptable.
You can't use freedom in a society to shut down freedom.
Yeah, absolutely, but because it's very hard to draw the line, and many people take advantage of this. Take for example, after 9/11, Muslims went into the hiding for almost a decade or more than this. They just hiding their identity, and after October 7, it was just next day they start demonstrating against Israel and against the West.
In New York, in London, in Paris, everywhere.
Within a week, they showed so much aggression. And again, this is the bloodlust that I told you about, which is very strange. You look 9/11 and you look October 7, and what's after? Totally different outcomes. So why all this? You know, and this hatred against the Jews that is attracting actually many Westerners who might have something in common, that they are all anti-Semites. And this is what's bringing the Islamists and the communists and the, could be the socialists even, to work together. They have something in common, and that is their hatred towards Israel. But what many Westerners are not understanding, that this is not only anti-Israel, it's anti-success and it's anti-civilization. It's pro-chaos. This type of individuals and this type of movements, they thrive in chaos. They don't like order. In order, they die. And this is why they want to see more of the chaos.
Mosab Hassan Yusuf, thank you.
Sure.